Thank you for stopping by the Atlanta Voice Studios this afternoon. We greatly appreciate it. Start us off by telling us who you are, where you're from, and tell us about yourself.
Awesome. So my name is Dr. Jasmine Clark, and I am the state representative for Georgia's House District 108, which encompasses the city of Lilburn as well as the unincorporated areas of Norcross, Tucker, Stone Mountain, and Lawrenceville. Although after redistricting, the district will look a little different in that I lose Tucker and gain a little bit more Lawrenceville and Norcross. I guess so a little bit about myself. The doctor in front of my name comes from my PhD in microbiology. So I'm not your typical politician in that I came by way of a science track. And I really ran on bringing a science voice to the Georgia State Legislature. I'm born and raised in Georgia. I am several generations here in Georgia. I only left for a little while to go to college, and I came back and started my family here.
Good deal, good deal. So as it stands now, the heartbeat bill is currently the law of the state. As we colloquially know it as the 6-week abortion ban. How are you going to motivate and empower not only your colleagues underneath the Gold Dome, but also your constituents and fellow Georgians to speak up, speak out, and mobilize?
So I think it is no secret that the majority of Georgians, in fact, the majority of Americans, do not agree with abortion bans. And so because we know that is the stance of a majority of Georgians, I think that all we really have to do is tell people what their power is to speak to their representatives and to let them know why they need to repeal this draconian bill that really strips rights away from one specific group of people in our state. And I think there's a number of ways to do that. Number one, what a lot of people don't realize is when we were in the state capitol and that vote was happening, many of the Republicans who did vote for it secretly, behind closed doors, stated that they felt like they had to vote for it in order to win their elections, but that they hoped that the courts would take care of it. Well, we saw what happened and that the courts did not take care of it. And in fact, it is the courts that put us in the position that we're in now. But I also think that the other powerful thing about what they said was, I cannot get elected if I vote against this. So the people in Georgia have to stand up, and speak out and let their elected officials know that voting for laws like this will cause them to lose their elections in the future.
For the last 2 sessions, the cries for election integrity by the Republican Party have dominated headlines, as you and I both know. We recently watched a video that showed Kathy Latham, then the GOP chairwoman for Coffee County, escort several members of forensics firm Sullivan Strickler into a county election office on January 7th of last year. If elected, how will you advocate for increased and equitable access to the ballot box in the state of Georgia?
So this question means so much to me, and the reason why is because since day one, I have been a strong advocate for voting rights. And a lot of that comes from my own personal story, where when I was on the ballot, I was also turned away from the voting place. And that helped me to realize that voter suppression is not always blatant. Sometimes it's very insidious, but it's those small minor changes and those small minor suppressive actions that can cause a ripple effect that can affect elections. So because of that, I think it's really important that we make sure that we have strong protections when it comes to protecting the integrity of our election, while also making sure that we increase access to the ballot box. one of the highest participation rates that we've had in our elections was actually during the pandemic, when you would actually expect for it to be lower. But the reason why participation was so high, number one, it was a historic election, but number two, there were so many different ways that people could access casting their ballot, whether that be in person, early, or in person on election day, as well as access to absentee voting that a lot of people didn't even know existed. By showing people all these different methods of voting, we had increased participation, and that is what we should always strive for. Every election, we should have more participation than the last time because we fix what's broken in order to give more people access to the ballot box. But these laws that we have right now, instead of doing that, they have basically taken surgical suppression of select voters. That's exactly what SB 202 did. And so it's really important that we elect the right people that will take a look at that law and remove things like unlimited voter challenges, which we've seen in Gwinnett County has caused groups that are not even from Georgia to come in and challenge 37,500 Gwinnett voters. So we have to take care of the parts of this law that strip people of their right to vote, make it more difficult to vote, and also undermine election integrity and administration.
The Hope Scholarship has always been a huge topic at the Capitol. The issues began to emanate and bubble to the surface during the Great Recession of 2008. As Hope failed to cover the soaring costs of higher education. What would you propose to help improve Hope's long-term viability?
So first off, as a member of the Higher Education Committee, I truly understand why we need to increase access to higher education. And I also understand that there's lots of innovative ways that people have come up with to increase that access, including things like need-based aid, also including things like closing the gap so that people who just need that last little bit of money in order to graduate can actually finish school instead of dropping out due to financial reasons. But when it comes to Hope Scholarship, overall, what we have to do is reconcile with the fact that our state actually does have a surplus right now of billions, and that means we have an opportunity to decide how we will use that money. And what better way to invest the money that has come into our state than in investing in the future of our state through access to education and higher education. So I believe that we should use some of that surplus in order to go toward K through 12 public education, as well as using some of that to find innovative ways to give other people access to higher education, including Hope Scholarship, but also implementation of needs-based scholarships as well.
Stacey Abrams and State Representative Ron Stevens, State Representative Ron Stevens initially brought forth the idea for legalizing casino gambling and sports betting in the state of Georgia about 7 years ago. Since then, recently, Stacey Abrams has joined that drumbeat and said, yes, she wants to legalize sports betting and casino gambling in the state of Georgia. Where do you stand on that issue?
So right now, my stance is I am not against sports betting in Georgia. The truth is sports betting is happening all across the country, and it is a source of revenue that could come into our state. However, I am concerned with how that revenue would be used. And so if a sports gambling bill comes to the floor and it comes in front of me, I want to make sure that some of those funds go to investing in education for both K through 12, as well as investing in higher education. When it comes to how we can get funds for needs-based scholarships, this is one of the avenues that we can use. But we have to make sure that the language of a bill ensures that that will actually happen, because what we can't do is trust that just anybody is going to do the right thing. It needs to be in the bill. So whether or not I cast my vote for sports betting, if it comes across my desk, is determined by what is in the bill and the language of the bill to make sure that that money goes to the places that it needs to go.
It's a personal question, but yet, it's also professional as well. But since we both are in the Capitol, I have the privilege of asking you, how well do you work with people that you fundamentally disagree with?
So I can fundamentally disagree with you on a lot of things, but I can also look for ways that we can work together on things that we can agree on. So for example, I am the co-chair of the Georgia Future Caucus, which is a bipartisan caucus co-chaired by both a Democrat, which is me, and a Republican Representative Stephen Saines. And this is an opportunity for millennial legislators to find policy that they can agree on and push forth together. So there are opportunities to work across the aisle. Many of the bills that I've sponsored have also been bipartisan in that at least one Republican has agreed to sign on to those bills, and sometimes more than one Republican. So I don't have a problem working across the aisle, but what I will not do is compromise my values. So if it comes down to things having to deal with racism, discrimination, or anything that excludes any member of our large, beautiful electorate, then I will not compromise on that. I will not work with anyone to take away rights from anyone in our state.
I want to piggyback off of that for just a second. During the last session, the cries for banning critical race theory, I think dominated about maybe a third to a fourth of the session, especially in the Senate. We've seen in the state of Florida, they've banned over 300 books that we've read and had to read when we grew up. How would you use your position in the legislature to empower teachers and students and the parents so that our public education system remains fair and equitable for everyone?
So the beautiful thing about being on the campaign trail is the conversations that I get to have. And I have had the opportunity to have real, authentic, organic conversations with teachers from across our state, and specifically in our district, or in my district. And what I found is that when it comes to these types of policies, they really do a major disservice to our education system as a whole. They really do take away from the classroom. And no one in our state, especially people in leadership, should be for taking away or stripping away the education that we offer to our students. And so I would love to support our teachers, and I think that starts with giving teachers a voice. You know, we make all these policies that have to do with education without even talking to the teachers or the actual stakeholders that will be affected by these bills. I say that about a lot of bills. When it comes to reproductive rights, why aren't we talking to the doctors, the nurses, the women, the people who are directly affected? And instead, you have a group of people who have a marginal impact, or that are marginally impacted by these things, if at all, making these decisions for others who will feel the brunt of these policies. So I think one of the best ways we can support our teachers is to give them a voice, and not just give them the voice, but lend our ears and actually listen to them and consider what they're saying to us that they need and what they want, and just respecting them. It is a dignified profession, and we should treat it as such and not treat them as if they are the throwaways of our society that should be at the behest of our whims.
It's my last question, and thank you again for joining us today here inside the Atlanta Voice Studios. How can people reach you? How can they get in touch with you?
This is my favorite question. All right, so you can reach me at my website, which is Jasmine, like the flower, the number 4ga.com. that's the easiest way to reach me. And from there, you can find out about my campaign. You can also find my social media and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also communicate with me directly under the contact form that goes directly to my cell phone. So you will actually be talking directly to me when you reach out to me on my website. And you know, I love to hear from people. So I encourage you, go to my website, read what I had to say about the issues, read what I've done and what I plan to do. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them.
All right.